late 19th century, Japanese immigrants began coming to the U.S. In Japan, only the eldest son could inherit the family land and business. Therefore, many younger sons immigrated to the United States.
The oldest son would inherit that big farm, but he had all this four other boys. So he had to provide for them, so he came to America. And then he called them up one by one, and he settled 3 sons here.
Issei worked in back-breaking jobs on railroads, on farms, and in people's homes as servants.
They came in, they were used mostly for hard labor work, railroads or on the farm, or California we have one called harvesting salt, and that's all back-breaking job. That's what they were hired to come here.
Issei expected to earn their fortunes and return to Japan. However, expectation was not always reality.
Well, I think they came like a lot of other Isseis. You know, the Isseis, the first generation. My dad came over thinking he'll come over. He was going to earn money so he could go back and finish his schooling back in Japan. Well, he got over here and he didn't make that kind of money, so he never got back to Japan. And in the meantime, I guess they decided he should get married. And then they started having kids, and then they found out they probably would never be able to go back to Japan again. And the first 2 of my sisters have Japanese names. And then there's Lillian and me. They knew by the time we came along, they weren't going back again, so they gave us American names.
As soon as they arrived in America, Issei adjusted to a new culture and way of life. They ate different foods, wore different clothing, and spoke a different language than they had in Japan. Listen to a humorous anecdote about an Issei man trying to look like everyone else.
When he took the public streetcar or whatever was there those days, he noticed that all the men would have newspapers. So he'd buy a newspaper and get on the bus and then, or streetcar I think it was. But then he'd hold the paper, he didn't know if it was right side up or upside down. But he wanted to look like the rest of the people.
Because there were few Japanese women in the United States, Japanese men wrote home to their families in Japan to arrange a marriage with a picture bride. The man and woman exchanged pictures, and the marriage was organized by a matchmaker. Picture brides went through a marriage ceremony before leaving for America. The bride and groom had another ceremony in the U.S. Like their husbands, Issei women adjusted to a new way of life in America.
But she had a difficult time because her father sent a lot of beautiful kimonos with her. You know, that's the only thing she wore over there. But she found out that it was very, very inconvenient to be wearing Japanese kimonos over here. So it took quite a thing to change to wearing American garments. But she came as a picture bride.
The Issei, and Asian immigrants in general, were not always welcome in the United States. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 prohibited Chinese immigration. Later, the National Origins Act of 1924 barred the immigration of Japanese. In addition, Asian immigrants could not become citizens because they were considered non-whites. This meant they could not own land, vote, or have any of the rights associated with citizenship.
It's hard to understand nowadays, but back then there were so many laws against Asians. They went into the hundreds, you know, before the war. Like you couldn't own land, or you couldn't intermarry, or you couldn't become citizens.
Any Asian was not eligible to become a naturalized citizen. So they're, you know, regardless of how long they'd lived here, they were still Japanese. And so there was always this. It was not a stigma, but they recognized that their state was still tenuous.
White Americans saw Asians as threatening their jobs and financial security. Many Asians were unable to find jobs other than as laborers or servants. even those with college degrees.
And those days, we Japanese did not have a choice. We women didn't have a choice of all these different vocations we could go into. So there was either nursing or go into business, be a secretary, or teaching.